and seen the entire spectrum of evolution: birth, growth, old age, clashes, death, and sometimes even resurrection of family businesses. The family business practice at our firm requires tremendous patience. We require to deftly handle conflicting ideas, conflicting aspirations, anger, ego, incidents of distant past suddenly coming alive, and sometimes downright desire for a revenge. The family business practice is also the most satisfying area of practice in our firm, where we get to see healing of wounds, patching up of relationships, preserving of the value of assets, and often transitioning successfully from one generation to another. One thing I have experienced in my 25 years at this firm is that the trust, the loyalty, and the admiration which you can get from a family business owner cannot be got from anywhere else except maybe from your own family members. The Surana and Surana law firm is proud to partner with the Bombay Management Association, a very prestigious 65-year-old industry association which represents the views of the industry and plays an important role in promoting new knowledge among the industry. We have brought this webinar together for you so that you can learn firsthand from leading business people and business family advisors on what is to be done, what is not to be done, how to preserve the family wealth, the family name, and how to successfully transfer the family business and value to the next generation without conflict. We have 2 family business owners, we have 2 family business advisors, we have an angel investor, and we have a family business lawyer. The format which we will be following today is that I will call upon each speaker to share their views, their experiences on the subject for about 10 to 15 minutes. And thereafter, I expect to have a very exciting, informative, and insightful question and answer session. I request the attendees to please feel free to post their questions, their doubts, their concerns in the chat box, and we will try our best to answer as many questions as possible. So with those few words, now I would like to call upon our first speaker, Mr. Paul Andrews. Paul Andrews is a London-based CEO and founder of Family Business United, an award-winning magazine and a resource center for family businesses in the United Kingdom. He is personally ranked among the top 100 global family business influencers, and he has over the past 2 decades championed the family business sector, raised awareness about the unique challenges being faced by family businesses, while also highlighting the great contributions made by family businesses towards wealth generation, employment, and income creation, among other things. Paul, over to you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to talk to you today. I have to say it's a real pleasure joining you all the way from the UK. As Dr. Vinod said, my name is Paul Andrews and I created Family Business United about 10 years ago, but after having had a career in the family business sector here in the UK and actually overseas. My journey in family business has evolved since I qualified as an accountant way back in 1999 and worked for Ernst & Young and then Grant Thornton. I subsequently took on the role as managing director of a travel business here in the UK, was membership director at the Institute for Family. Follow my dream and my passion, which is to champion family firms. A research project very early on at Grant Thornton into the challenges facing family firms set me on my way. And finally, Family Business United was born. Today, I've been asked to share some insight into succession planning for family firms, something that is a real challenge for family business owners the world over, not just in India. So what is succession planning? Put simply, succession planning is the transition of leadership and ownership of the business to the next generation. It sounds simple, but actually it's far from easy. What are the key objectives? Well, the key objectives of succession are typically to protect family harmony, family wealth, and the family business. But it's during this period of generational transition that the business is at its most vulnerable. It's also at a period when emotions run high. The transition of the family business raises complex and emotion-laden problems. With so many public tales of acrimony, conflict, and legal wrangling related to succession, it's little wonder that many family business owners fail to plan. However, I've seen it firsthand. It's often this failure to plan that causes the disharmony that they try so hard to avoid in the first place. So what could be done about it? Firstly, it's vitally important to note that succession planning is a process. It's not an event. It takes time, because in order to succeed, it needs to be planned over a period of time, and it takes time to get it right. Secondly, due to the very nature of passing on the baton to the next generation, there is the need to hold what is often difficult and often emotive conversations. After all, transition will occur when the current generation are approaching their latter years, and there will be challenges for them in stepping down, distancing themselves from the business on a day-to-day basis, and also for the next generation, challenges in stepping up, taking on the lead, learning new skills, and being given the authority and responsibility to take on the business. I've lots of stories from next generation members who enter a family firm and are apparently given leadership by their peers and their parents, but with little responsibility and authority in reality. Sometimes the older generation continue to influence and make decisions. And in many cases, this can cause conflicts and frustrations. And it's not until the shares are actually passed over that the next generation really finally feel empowered to take on the role with real authority and responsibility. A succession plan provides clarity, purpose, and key milestones to help everyone involved set a framework in order to achieve a successful transition. Success will result in a positive outcome for the business and the family. And one of the benefits would be that all the value of the transition and the new skills being brought in are realised, with few of the that they're doing the right thing, trying to be fair and equal to all of their children, but actually in the end up causing more problems. So it's worth taking a holistic view in terms of the share ownership for the next generation and how that might play out when making a succession plan and plan for the future. For the next generation, I think it's really important that they need to be honest with what they want from life, what their life journey will be like for them, and to determine really early on whether it actually is a role in the family business. If they are to take on a role, they need to be committed. And if they're not committed, or they're doing a role just because they feel obligated to do it, the business will not get the best from them and they will not have a fulfilling life. And that's a plan that's destined to fail. It's also important that the next generation understand the role they're being employed to do and the skills that they need to do that role. And it shouldn't feel like a burden to them, a burden of responsibility. And all too often, talking to next generation members, they feel stuck in a role in a business that they didn't really want to do, but they're doing it out of loyalty, love, and respect for the older generation. For the business, in a constantly changing world, and I think 2020 is probably the biggest change that many of us have seen during our lifetimes, the skills required of the future leader of your family businesses are going to be different to the CEO of the past and the CEO of today. So it's important that the successor can fulfill the role and meet the new needs of the business as the business evolves going forward. As Jim Collins explains, it's not just about getting the right people on the bus, but the right people in the right seats with the right skills on the bus to drive the business to the next stage. It's also really important that documentation is maintained throughout the whole succession process. Keeping notes and minutes and agreements and notes of salaries and roles and responsibilities is a really important part of the process, as is the reason that people have been turned down, because clear communication against a plan helps to reduce the potential for misunderstanding and conflict, especially in multi-generational businesses where there are lots of next generation members, all of whom feel that they're vying for the lead role. So the process is really important, but actually documentation and actually measurements against the framework is really key. Communication is also a vital component to any succession plan to ensure that everybody is informed of the process, the outcomes, and ultimately supports the transition to the next generation leader and supports that leader as they take on the role as lead of that family firm. A succession plan is really important, but it also requires the real commitment of the family for family firms now to start the process as soon as possible. And actually, I have seen on numerous occasions family businesses that have gone through a transition, and as soon as that transition has happened and the next generation leader is in place, they start to consider the next succession process at that stage. So they're well ahead of the curve when it comes to being the transition to the next generation going forward. I want to leave you with a number of things that I think will help create a successful succession plan for a family business and help that transition from one generation to the next. For me, number one, it's make it a process and not an event. It cannot happen overnight. It takes time, and it takes time to get everybody on board. And it's important that all the stakeholders are involved. It's important to be professional and open and actually communicate through the whole process from start to finish. And I think now it's really important to consider all the options available for the future leaders of the family firms, be it an insider or an outsider, be it a family member, but actually it might be that you bring in a professional advisor from outside to manage the business in the interim whilst the next generation are finding their feet and learning the skills. Family business leaders often describe themselves as stewards, so stewards for future generations, and really wanting to pass the business on to the next generation in a better state that they inherited. And I think that's putting pressure on business owners now in the pandemic, because a number of businesses have struggled and had to pivot and change. So the history and heritage that's got them to where they are today has changed overnight. And fundamentally, the next generation are taking on a business that has changed. So if you want to be stewards for the next generation, it's important to appoint a steward, someone with the right skills, but also somebody that understands the family history, heritage, and purpose, and recognizes the importance to the family, the business, and its broader purpose, and that they have the ability to take that business. I firmly believe it's really important to recognize the older generation, to step back and part from your baby. It's something that you've nurtured and worked with for 20, 30, 40 years or longer, and actually then suddenly going from an active day-to-day role to just being almost like the person in the room over there that comes in once a week to a board meeting is a really difficult challenge. And I think everybody should be cognizant and actually recognize that stepping back can be quite difficult. And in some cases, what really works very well with clearly defined roles and responsibilities is to create an ambassadorial role for the older generation. So they are still the figurehead of the family, they're the ambassadorial representative of the business, but actually the next generation are then left to run the day-to-day operations with full authority and responsibility, but it brings the family into a more cohesive unit. I think it's also really important that the next generation leader and the output of the succession plan is not a clone of the current leader. Businesses evolve, and in order to succeed, we've all seen it, the business needs to remain relevant to the market in which it operates today, and that market will be very different to the market that was led by a CEO 20 years ago. So recruit the right person and not necessarily a clone of the current CEO. Another challenge really, and it's a positive for the next generation, but one that sometimes the retiring generations struggle with, is to recognize that the next generation will do things differently. And actually we live in a world now of digital and social media, and actually they will do things differently, and they should be allowed to make their own mistakes within reason, but empower them to make those decisions and actually get on with the job rather than hamper them and give them a role, but then tie their hands behind their back where they can't do what they see as the strategic direction they need to take. And provide authority and ownership so the next generation can actually lead the business. Empower them to take it on, let them take it on, and let them create the next chapter in the journey of the family firm and actually manage the business rather than actually manage the relationships that are stopping them doing what they do on a daily basis. I think for me, all of the key stakeholders need to really commit to the succession plan and the transition from one generation to the next to make it happen. Fixed to a timetable and in a way that works for them individually, for you all as a family, but most importantly for the business, so the business can succeed. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, but one thing is for sure. Failure to plan for succession is planning to fail. So it is really vital that the conversations start as early as possible to give the best chance of success in passing the family business to the next generation. But most of all, and most important from my perspective, is to have open and honest conversation. Be honest with yourselves and actually make sure that you give yourself every chance to succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. You made some very important points, like allowing next generation to make mistakes, having open conversations, the old generation to select and train a succession in time, getting an outside advisor, starting the process soon, and things like that. A lot of thoughts have been triggered. I will come back to you during the course of this program with some questions on these to get more clarity. So now I request our next speaker, Mr. Ajit Kumar Choradia, a very successful Chennai-based fourth generation family business owner, an acknowledged entrepreneur come industry leader in his own right. He has made a name for himself in the auto, real estate, and IT parks segment, and is a credible voice of the industry associations representing the various sectors in which he is doing business. He is sought after for his ability to grasp complex problems, come up with innovative solutions, carry different stakeholders together, and effectively communicate his views and the views of his industry. Over to you, Mr. Ajit.
Thank you very much, Vinod sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible, Vinodji?
Yes, please, no problem. Go ahead.
So thank you. So I just like to correct, I'm a third generation entrepreneur. So my family has been in the city of Chennai for almost 100 years. So my grandfather started the business here. He was a true entrepreneur. He came without any capital of his own, and he left behind a great legacy for us to develop. I had been through a family partition almost 30 years back. So I know what is the pain which a person goes through when there is a partition. So I personally experienced the whole process of partition. And today when I look back 30 years back, what happened, for what reason we were going through this partition, was it really required? I feel very sad that had there been some more counseling which was there, or some more consultants could have been there, the things could have been avoided. Today again, after 30 years from the partition which I went through in 1989, again now we are in 2020, and I'm looking at my own business which is there, when I look at my own family, when I look at the generation next, again the thought comes, will my family which is there will remain together? Will the family business remain together? There are a number of challenges which are there. There are multiple businesses. One part of the business is being looked after by me, and one part of the business is looked after by my brother. And we have the generation next. I have again a problem of, I have 3 daughters. My brother has 1 daughter and 1 son. So how is it that the succession is going to take place? So these are a lot of challenges which are there, a lot of questions which have been there, which have been going in our mind for quite some time. Almost 20 years back, I attended a convention of national automobile dealers in United States. It's a very, very large convention of automobile dealers. And looking at some of the concurrent programs which were going on, the seminars which were going on, one particular seminar caught my attention. The program was All for One and One for All. I was very curious about it, and I attended that particular program. And I realized the problems which we face in India, America is no different. Even in US, the auto dealerships is mostly family-run business which is there. Even they have the same problem which we have in India. So number of family members growing, business not growing, or number of family members growing, businesses being there, some businesses doing better than the other business. Other members of the family, or most of the members of the family, would like to join the same business. So this is a classic problem which we face in India. I was surprised that this is the same problem which we see even in US. Because I'm talking almost 22, 23 years back. So that concept has been, this particular quote which was there, all for one and one for all, has been in my mind for a number of years. Recently, again, about 4 years back, there was one more program which I had the privilege of hosting. In this program also, I had a speaker, one of the leaders in this particular field of family succession and family governance. So he was addressing a group of fellow members, and he made one particular statement which had a very, very lasting impact on me. He said that people forget that there is something called ownership and there is something called management. How ownership is different from management. Similarly, in a very, very brief, it was hardly a 30-minute or a 40-minute presentation by this gentleman. The second concept which he listed was, what is the difference between dividend and what is the difference between remuneration? So I really felt that, okay, this particular concept of ownership and management being different, if it is understood by every stakeholder in the family, and if there is an enough remuneration for a person who is looking after the business without compromising onto the dividend, which is going to be distributed to all members of the family, things could be much, much smoother and the understanding could be there. There would not be any need for looking at partitions which are there. When we look at today the businesses which are there, we are very eager to sign up a joint development, joint ventures with soliciting private equity, and we would like to commit so many things to the private equity investors. When it comes to our own siblings which are there, we are not in a position to give those same privileges which are there. So this is something which has been in my mind. I told you almost about two decades back. And again, about 4 or 5 years back, when I heard this gentleman talking of how ownership and management and remuneration and dividend could be discussed. During this lockdown, we had taken, me and my brother said that in case we need to perpetuate our family business, which is there, and if we need to be cohesive and work together, in that case, I think there needs to be a governance which is there, we need to set up. So towards that, we started going through the process. There are a number of unanswered questions which were there. I have daughters, what would be the role of the daughters in the business? Will they have ownership rights or not? Will they have ability to participate in the management or not? Same thing was there with my brother. Again, who is going to lead? Whether the leadership is going to be by means of competence, or is it going to only be by means of a gender or by virtue of age? So these were all unanswered questions which were there. What will be the ownership? My parents are there. What would be my stake? What would be the stake of my brother which is there in the business? Are we going to be equal or not? How are we going to divide? I have 3 children. My brother has 2. Are we going to divide the total thing among 5? Or are we going to create 2 branches? One for my family and another for his family? All these type of questions which were there in our mind, we were able to discuss this, of course, through the help of the professional who was there, and we were able to take it up one by one. And very happily, we have been able to decipher quite a lot of things. One of the most important thing which I found in the whole exercise in the last 2 months, which we have been doing to come with a governance structure and a succession planning, was the effective communication, the channels which all the professionals have been talking about, the experts which have been talking about, is the communication. So communication seems to be very, very, very important. In my business, as an entrepreneur, we are, and as more so as a family business person, one of the key plus points which we have is our ability to take risk and ability to take decisions and to take decisions fast. But at times, taking fast decisions without having proper communication in the family definitely creates a problem. And that is perhaps one of the good things. I hope that I'm able to formalize the particular structure which we are coming, and we are able to discuss, yes, this particular structure may result in a little bit of time delay, trying to build consensus and then taking it forward. If there is no consensus, what happens? These are some of the questions which are there, which only time will say how we are going to address. But it is better that we are able to discuss this and record these particular things and take it forward. As the business grows, the more family members are coming in, it is becoming more and more important. Again, an important issue which we have been able to debate and not debate, I would say deliberate and come forward was, what would be the role of the son-in-laws? Will my son-in-laws which are there, will they be part of the business or not? Will they be part of the management or not? So a lot of questions which are there, we have been able to build it. There is at least a clarity which is there today among the family members, and good part is almost all the generation next, the 4th generation in the family, they're all in the age of 20 to 30. So almost all of them have been involved in the process. So they know, okay, and we have been able to build and record the values which are there, what the business stands for, what the family stands for, how the wealth of the family was created, and how is it that you are going to spend the money which is there. So it's not that everything is going to only be spent. How is it that, how much are you going to save? How much are you going to spend on your so-called luxuries which are there? Will there be any limits which are there? Will there be any discretion available to the family member to do or not? All these particular things we have been reasonably been able to do. The whole thing has been possible only because of the communication. So I think it's a great subject Vinodji has chosen to bring this. This particular subject is less deliberated in the business families, but I've been fortunate in meeting people like Vinod and a lot of other people who have been able to guide us, and I'm sure our example would be quoted at a number of other places in the days to come. Thank you, Vinod.
Thank you, Ajit ji. You also reflect the same some similar thoughts like what Paul said. Communication, communication, communication. So I would like to come back to all the panelists on this question in the next round. Ajit ji, you did mention that your family went through a painful partition. So I would like to, during the next part of this session, request you to speak about the impact that partition had on your family, on the relationships, on the trust, things like that, if you are comfortable. With those few words, thank you, Ajit ji. Now I move on to Mrs. Raji Raju, a very interesting personality. She holds a degree in business and information technology from the United States and a degree in psychology from India. She is also an accomplished classical music singer, a Bharatanatyam dancer, and a choreographer. She was the joint promoter with her serial entrepreneur husband of a very big company called Vetri Software, which they sold for a very good sum. And now they are onto diagnostics, medical diagnostics. Mrs. Raji Raju is an angel investor, the past president of the PTA of the American International School at Chennai. She has held leadership positions in the Young Presidents Organization in Detroit and later in India, in Chennai. And she is actively involved in several social service organizations. Now, what impressed me a lot was despite her competence, despite her educational background and popularity, she chose to give up her professional career to raise her two children, Roshan and Roshni, and to look after her aged parents and in-laws. She's a deeply spiritual person and believes in celebrating life every day. So Mrs. Raji Raju, I would like you to please share your views on family business and succession planning. Over to you.
Namaste, Vinodji. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. Namaste and good evening to the esteemed panelists. I would like to share my journey as being a woman in a family business, married to a serial entrepreneur. So with the background in psychology, and I further did my education in the United States, my journey in business started with my serial entrepreneur with his first venture with Vetri Software, which was primarily into software and product development. Later on in the 1990s, early 1990s, there was a subsidiary that was opened in Chennai, which basically was into business process outsourcing. We were one of the pioneers at that point in time. In 1998, we sold Vetri Software, and a few years later decided to relocate to India in the year 2002. When we relocated to India, Raju started his second venture, Raju, my husband, Raju Venkatraman. His second venture was Rev IT, which was primarily focused on healthcare BPO. During that time, Raju was very passionate about coming back and giving back to the country and community and taking healthcare to the rural parts of India. And he was the visionary, and I was somebody who would implement felt trap in his vision pretty much. So we relocated, and at that point in time, he wanted to have affordable healthcare for people in the rural area and touch about 6 million lives. And so was born our third venture, which was Medall Healthcare Private Limited. And I'm happy to say that in 2018-19, Medall touched about 12 million lives, and today has a presence in about 8 states, and is one of the most visible diagnostics in Tamil Nadu in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. The different roles I played during my journey being married to the serial entrepreneur is first and foremost being a board member in the United States. Then I dabbled in HR development, training, I create curriculum for training in Y2K in those days, legal publishing, healthcare, working capital budget, strategy into new verticals, even wore hats of being in administration positions when we are in startup mode. Also dabbled in being part of a construction crew and working on interiors in our lab. So I had a great opportunity to grow multidimensionally being married to the serial entrepreneur. There are other roles that I also felt that I should mention, or other hats rather, as while wearing these roles and being in a family business where it's very important to have harmony and in a relationship, especially in a close-knit family, there were sometimes I had to wear hats of being subservient. I had to wear a hat of being obedient, sometimes leading in the front. So there was always a balance of follow and lead that I had to play. When it came to children and culture, I chose to take a back seat at some point in time when we relocated, so that I can play a critical role in making sure my children are well settled when we relocated back to India. I had this unique position to also be part of a joint family where we had both parents and in-laws living with us. We chose to put the children, we wanted to give our children an exposure to a global world. It was very important for us to have them have Indian roots, have some middle-class values, but at the same time, be effective global citizens. And the American International School in Chennai actually fit most of the requirements that we had. So we put them in the American International School. While my husband was globetrotting in 18 countries, there were times that I had to take a role to take a step back and try to maintain connect with our immediate and extended family. It was very important for us because family is an integral part of our growth and well-being. Later, relocation had covered, moving to India, being in the international school. Vinodji had asked me to cover on this gender glass ceiling. I would like to say a few words on that. Yes, there is a gender glass ceiling. There is no doubt about that. But does that stop an individual from accomplishing, and does it stop an individual from breaking this glass ceiling? I don't think so, probably not. Although 75% of enterprises around the world have today been able to incorporate diversity and equal opportunities and inclusion policies, the traditional glass ceiling is not the only boundary or the only obstacle in my mind. In both low income and high income countries, women do juggle both on the family responsibilities and career priorities. Many times, it so happens that there is also a gender pay gap. So hence it's very difficult for the women to compete with a male counterpart who is in the same level as she is. So a glass ceiling does exist. But having said that, there is also a perspective that I would like to bring to the table. When there is a measurement of professional accomplishments as for a glass ceiling, it does exist for any spouse, be it male or female. Basically, what I'm trying to come to the conclusion is that it's not easy for us to conclude that this glass ceiling only exists for women. For us, for my personal experience, it had to do with the shared vision that I shared with my husband as to how we would have our life pan out when we relocated. This included the relocation. This shared vision plays a crucial role in my mind in understanding how you would like to define your success. And this plays a primary role in every individual entrepreneur's life. I would like to stop here and leave it up to Vinodji to ask me questions, which I'll be happy to address.
Thank you, Mrs. Raju. There are a couple of points which you made, for which I will come back to you. You spoke about playing the lead and follow role. Sometimes you led. The word you used was sometimes you are obedient. Sometimes you said you were subservient. So how do you decide on when to lead, when to follow? That is something which I would like to know more about, learn more about from you. You said about giving up your career for your children. The earlier speakers have said this, and I believe the others will also touch this point, that it is very important to develop the next generation. So then I will also come back to you on the role of the woman, the mother, the wife, the daughter-in-law. They play, by taking care of the children, they also ensure the success of the next generation. So I will come back to you on that. But yes, you touched upon some very important points. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to call upon our next speaker, Mr. Vijay Kumar Lodha. He is based in Malegaon, a tier 2 or tier 3 city in Maharashtra, a visionary second generation business leader who not only has seen total transformation of his family business, but also underwent many trials, tribulations, tensions, and trust issues for the last 50 years. And these are all issues which are part of any large growing family business. And his family has successfully overcome this, and they are now again on the way to growth. He is currently in the process of consolidating, putting together a family constitution, and ensuring a successful transition to the next generation. Personally, Mr. Vijay Kumar Lodha has a degree in commerce. He is a founder patron of the very famous Jain International Trade Organization and a vice chairman of its Nasik chapter. He has received several prestigious awards from the Government of India, Government of Maharashtra, as well as various private organizations. He is currently the CMD, Chairman and Managing Director of MB Sugars, which is the only company in the world to manufacture sucrose under a drug license, and is the largest sugar spear manufacturing facility in all of Asia. So I would like to request Mr. Vijay Kumar Lodha to speak a few words about his background, how his family went through the transition, what challenges he faced, and how he overcame them. Over to you, Mr. Lodha.
Thank you, Mr. Surana. Very good evening to all. I am Mr. Vijay Kumar Lodha. Basically, my father started business in 1940 with his 4 brothers. And the business we came to contact with Seth Walchand Hirachand, who is a chairman of Walchand Group. And my father's journey started with Seth Walchand. We have a 30 years continuous business with Seth Walchand Group, and we grow in our area like anything. We have a very good name, we have a very good business, and in 30 years span, my father has given a huge donations to the Jain community. But after 30 years, there is a misunderstanding between the brothers, and they split in 1970. In 1970, again, my father with his 2 brothers started business, and that time my father called me to come in the business. That time my age was 18. I was studying in the college. I started looking after the business, agriculture farm, go to college, sit with the father, take a training. This started at the age of 18th. Then after that, I suggested my father that we are in a trading business. We are in an agency line. So it's better to have a manufacturing line because, instance, what happened that our Rawalgaon Confectionery Agency of All India is taken out by the company. So I told my father, we should work for us, not for others, because what my father has done for the Rawalgaon, that was not passed on to the next generation of the Rawalgaon people. They don't know what pains taken by my father. So I told, now we want to work for us only, not for others. We will grow for ourselves. So I told my father to start manufacturing. That time, Rawalgaon is the only manufacturer of the mishri which is used in the prasad. In 1991, mishri plant, which is the largest mishri plant in India. Before that, we are already having a business of mishri plant. Mishri
Vijayji, your audio is not coming clearly.
I think we have lost him. There's been a drop in the internet.
Yeah, I guess because of
whatever the 5 kg.
So maybe in a few seconds, if we don't get him back, we will go on to Ms. Sonu Bhasin and then come back. Because I think Mr. Lodha has a very interesting story and experiences to share. Okay, I think we will wait for him to reconnect. And in the meantime, I will request Ms. Sonu Bhasin, our next speaker, to share her thoughts. Ms. Sonu Bhasin is one of the senior most women professionals in the family business advisory space. She has over 30 years of experience in the corporate world, having held positions of significant responsibility in the Tata Group, the ING Barings Group, Axis Bank, Yes Bank, before finally returning back to the Tata Group. She is an independent director on the boards of reputed domestic and multinational companies. And she currently focuses on family businesses as the founder of Family and Business, FAB, where she not only advises family businesses, but is also a family business historian and the editor-in-chief of the Family Business magazine. She is a firm believer that family businesses are the unrecognized and unappreciated heroes of the Indian economy, and that they deserve greater recognition, greater support, and scientific systems to preserve value and avoid conflict. Over to you, Ms. Bhasin. We would like to hear your views on this very interesting subject.
Thank you, Vinodji. Thank you for making me part of this very interesting conversation. The topic for the day is succession planning and family businesses. And I would like to focus on the succession part of it and share with the participants my experiences both as a corporate professional and then as an entrepreneur. Now, whether as a professional, whether as a banker, and whether as a consultant, the family business owners that I have come across, I do believe intrinsically that they are some of the smartest people that I have known. And if I look at family business owners around the world, I am not sticking my neck out when I say that they are indeed the smartest people, some of the smartest people that exist in the world. And therefore, to me, it is always a matter of wonder that such smart people who plan for every other part of their life and business do not plan for succession. Uh, I mean, this is absolutely counterintuitive. You ask any family business owner about their business plans, and they will give you not only a 1-year perspective, a 5-year perspective, they'll give you a 50-year perspective. But you ask them about succession, and they'll hum and they'll haw and they'll, they'll try and say, ki, haan, dekha jayega, we'll see when it happens, etc. Or my children are good guys, they'll take care of themselves, don't worry. And I'm now going to, again, share with you my own analysis and my own speculative details of why I think such smart people fail to even conceive of and then implement the basics which is required to take their businesses forward. And that reason is something that lies within all of us, and that is the fear of mortality. None of us like to believe that we will die, though we all know that we will die one day. But we don't want to think about it. And maybe this is a very Indian cultural thing. Maybe this is something that we do in India. But if we look around the world, succession planning remains to be the key reason why family businesses fail to perpetuate. So sticking on to the Indian culture bit, even as a banker, when we used to talk to people about it in various ways, they used various words, they used various anecdotes, but it was clear that right from the childhood, their fathers had involved them in the business. And involvement didn't mean that they had to go out and sell. Involvement meant that they were taken to the office, they were taken to the factory, they were told to sit, they were asked, little questions, they were asked for their opinion. Whether the father took it or not was another matter. But the children grew up connected with the business. And therefore, even though they worked outside after their global education, they always had an emotional connect with the business. And this helped them to come back and join the family business when the patriarch said that they did want to get additional help with the inheritors. And my last point before I hand it back to Dr. Vinod, the last point is that patriarchs often also complain about the fact that, they may have planned for succession. I have got my son into the business, but, he doesn't do anything. He doesn't listen to me. He does whatever he wants to do. I have built the business and he doesn't know as much as I know. Why doesn't he listen to me? I don't find it surprising that the inheritors then want to run away from a business. I mean, which youngster, which late 20-year-old or early 30-year-old who has had the best education in the world, is capable, confident, enthusiastic, would want to come back and not be given any operational freedom to run the business? And therefore, if the patriarchs do want a clear succession plan and they do want their children to come back to be part of the business, the patriarchs have to let go. At some stage, they have to trust their own genes. The children are your own, your sons and daughters. If you are intelligent, if you are hardworking, why do you assume that your children are not going to be that? You have to trust them. You have to allow them to make mistakes. You have to be a gentle guiding factor and not an authoritarian controller, because that is the surest way of ensuring that even though you may have a good, robust succession plan, the succession will not take place in the manner that you had envisaged. I will stop here, and if there are any questions, I would be happy to take them. Dr. Vinod?
Thank you, Ms. Basin. Again, yet another speaker makes the point of communication involving different stakeholders in the family. You made a very interesting point, the anecdotal evidence about inheritance wanting to run away because the founders don't give them sufficient space, sufficient operational responsibilities. So I will come back to you on that. But before we start the question answer session, I would like to go back to Mr. Vijay Kumar Loda. We missed him. I think we had internet disconnection. Mr. Loda,
Yes.
you left off at the point where you told your father that your family should work for itself and not for others.
Yes.
As having their agencies, you are giving us the Ravalgon experience. So please, sir, please go ahead.
After that, I pursued my father. I told to start manufacturing, and we started manufacturing of the machinery in 91. In 97, we started manufacturing of pharma grade sugar. In meantime, in India, there are many pharma companies who are importing the pharma sugar from US. They make our medicines and they sell it to US. Ranbaxy Seed Lab have a vendor development scheme. In that, they have chosen us and we have started a pharma grade sugar manufacturing in Malegaon in the name of MB Sugars and Pharmaceuticals Limited. This is totally dedicated to the pharma industries. This year, the sucrose which is manufactured is as per the different pharmacopoeias, like a European pharmacopoeia, US pharmacopoeia, with a different particle sizes. This is the only plant in India which is serving to the all pharma industries of India. What are the medicine goes to other countries from India? If sugar is required, only MB sugar is registered and only that they can use it for their exports of medicines. Then we have registered with the drug master file of USA. We are this manufacturing this sucrose under drug license. In the world, nobody manufactures sucrose under drug license with DMF. So we have a in this item. We have a different particle sizes we produce in sucrose. And there are many problems of sucrose in pharma industries. We have solved almost all problems of pharma industries and we become a problem solver in the pharma industries. MB had created a very took us to have a more manufacturing units. So we have started a mannitol, spray dried mannitol in India. We import the mannitol, we make it spray dried mannitol, and in the country, this is the only plant to make a spray dried mannitol. After that, we started a sugar spears facility. Sugar spears are used for the sustained release medicine. This facility is Asia's largest facility for manufacturing the sugar spears. Then we manufacture shellac and so many excipients. All excipients are manufactured in GMP plant. Now we have created a world-class facility in our 10 acres land. In sugar spears, we want to be the world's #1. After 5 years, we will be the #1 in sugar spears manufacturing with the different combinations. Then we have in city like Malegaon, a taluka place, we have created world-class facility. We have not brought any labor from outside. We have
Sorry, I think we have lost him again.
huge potential. This understanding is very good, and that created our group as a in our area as a scale. You can take as we work with the zero rejections. Then what happened? When there is a business is growing, everybody is in a comfort zone. New generation came. Then we started, this business should grow more. We must have a professional management. When we work like this, we will grow, but it should be growth should be disciplined. We must have a communication, discipline. Then you can say faith on each other. Without faith, you can't grow. You have to then transparency in the business, transparency in the working. For that, we have created a family constitution. And that family constitution gave us a very good effect. Means due to family constitution, the way of working is written down, and then we started having a regular family get together, meetings, outings. Then in the constitution, for the first time, we made a business plan for next 5 years projections. Company goal sheet, individual goal sheets. Everyone had his roles and responsibilities clearly defined. And our family started moving towards corporate discipline. With all that life has made me experience, I take back learnings that in the long run, what's the best for the company is often what's best for the family as well. As I am a head of the family, I have to always take a meeting, discuss with everybody, have their views, then take a decision. As I am a CMD of the MB Sugar, I have decided that my group should grow with discipline, faith, communications, and everybody will get the freedom to work. Our new generation is very, you can say, technically very sound, and they have a very good communication and understanding between all three brothers. So I have a full confidence that my group in near future, you can say within the next 5 years, we will be on a very high level. Other thing, we are also trying to sell out our mannitol plant to one US company. We may the 50%, or we may sell full if we get our price. That way, we are working in business also. Because this is a time, this is a need of the time. And in Malegaon, we are doing this. Now, the business things have changed. You can sit anywhere, you can work anywhere, not necessarily to shift to Bombay and Pune and Chennai. You can sit in Malegaon, but you must have a vision. You must have a courage to work. You can have a business from Malegaon to whole world also. As we are selling to near about 25 to 30 countries, our product.
Importance of culture and running success. Now, I would deal with the not so good part of family business, and that is conflict management. How does a family manage conflict? And if they get into conflict, can they avoid conflict? So I will just quickly share a few screens to see. Hang on for a second. This is something which most of kind of have heard, that, you know, family businesses are complicated because there are two things which entwine: love, affection, and family, compared to meritocracy and financial performance. So that's why there will be conflict. This is another thing which most of us have heard. Majority of family-owned businesses are likely to fail because of internal challenges, with the key issue being inevitable and destructive family conflicts. Another one, conflict is a natural part of any running business, but when colleagues and employees are also family members, ordinary conflict can take a new dimension. So normally, disputes within families do not escalate suddenly. It would start as a minor disagreement or a the same yardstick? No, not really. Many a times, minor disagreement or divergence of interest drives fresh thinking and better solutions. Hence, the head of the family needs to manage it well, knowing when to step in and when not to step in. So let me share the types of conflicts one may encounter in a family business. I have broadly classified them in 4 categories. I would again share that with you. I say conflicts which are inherent to a business, conflicts which could be financial in nature, conflicts which could be personal in nature, and then there are these other conflicts which do not fall in any of these 3 things. So under the inherent business nature, the conflicts could be strategy, as in what could the strategy be? What should the strategy be followed by the family members? How should they grow it? Should it be a growth, organic growth? Should it be an inorganic growth? And then look at, you know, maybe even how they're going to take the business forward. Should it be more of a forward integration, or should it be more of backward integration of, you know, how the business is going forward? New technologies. When should new technologies be taken in? How should it be taken in? Could the old systems be just jumped because the new technologies come in? Automation. What level of automation can you bring in? Because automation is expensive and it takes a lot of investment. So should it be fully automated? Should it be kind of, you know, semi-automated? So all this kind of is a decision which needs to be made. So there is always divergent views when it comes to these issues, but still decisions have to be taken and have to be made. Under finance, the conflicts could be, should we take more debt, or should we fund our expansion through more equity? What should the compensation of all the family members should be? Because I think Ajit Chowdhury had spoken about, you know, should it be kind of dividends, just the dividends which the shareholders get, or because I am working, I should also be compensated for the salary or the time which I spend at business. Next thing could be, what are the benefits which the family members working on in office could be? So the best example could be if 2 brothers are working, should they get the same kind of cars which they have? Or should it could be as mundane as, you know, what kind of furnishing could their offices be? Or what kind of, you know, perils or perquisites they can have? So could they enjoy a golf club membership? So it could go down to all those very, very basic and free things. But yes, these things are what comes up and brings up conflict. Next thing is, you know, how do we provide employment to family members if the family members are large? Can the business accommodate all the family members? Is there a need for all family members to take part in business? So these are the issues which predominantly affect decision making when it comes to finance. And the typical Indian mentality is kind of, withdrawing money from businesses for family needs. A typical way would be a good fat Indian wedding, where lavish monies are spent by families, and many times these are sucked out of businesses. Moving forward to personality conflicts which could come up. How should one deal with issues of personalities of different person has different personalities, different person react different to a given situation. So how does that affect when you run your business? Next thing could be your sibling rivalry. If there is an old small rivalry which has been started or which has been lingering for a while, that kind of spans out badly when it comes to running businesses. Many times spouses and in-laws also take part in businesses. So what kind of rights or what kind of authorities can be given to them? And how does it affect in a non-business environment when those issues are carried back home? And how does it affect the personal life of a person running the business? The most often spoken part is like, succession after the death of the patriarch or a matriarch, as in who would lead this? Assuming if the patriarch had not written this in a family constitution or at least in his will, then there is always a dispute of who's going to run and lead this. Then comes all the others, which I've just listed down a few of them here. There are many more there, as an inside shareholder versus an outside shareholder. Many families are inviting private equity to participate in their business growth. And one distinct source of conflict could be this outside shareholder who kind of can arm twist the existing shareholders. Many times when you borrow from banks and financial institutions, there are chances that they impose a nominee director on your board. So if all these days previously you just had your family members on board, now you have an outside board. So will you be discussing the same things in this board, or will you be discussing just the business and nothing else on the board? So these are the other conflicts which will be taking place. Another thing is that many times when it comes to listed businesses, what takes preferences? Does it take the performance of the company because you're answerable to the outside shareholders, or the family requirements which kind of takes precedent? So I've kind of broadly classified these conflicts which you could face into different categories, but there are many which you could. I'll just give you this as an example. Now, how do we deal with these conflicts, and how does one, as a person running the businesses or a person facing conflicts, what do you do and how do you do? So again, I would share a quick screen of mine. Just 1 second, please. Okay, I think my computer froze, but anyway, I think the best source of dealing with conflict is again having a good family constitution document. This has been highlighted with many of the previous speakers that having a good family constitution takes care of most of the conflicts which could have. Family constitution kind of literally lists down we followed for our family members to solve all conflicts. Clubbing this with a good formal governance structure, which would normally take care of most of the conflicts which a family business could face, would take care of it. Because once you have a good governance structure, family members would not deviate from the processes given and would always have a fair approach. It is when the governance structure is given a go-by that the conflict starts blowing out of control. That's when either you will need help from a senior family member to step in and take control, or even require outsiders to come in, probably guide and take control. Sometimes Disputes may be complex and would definitely require experts and outsiders to help and mediate. For this, the family members should have immediate access to a pool of experts in their business and should be able to get them and advise the family. Sometimes it may cost money, good money, but still it's worth spending that money because it may solve your problems or even your existence if the current issue is not taken care of. Experts may come from technical knowledge, from domain knowledge, from legal tax knowledge, and sometimes with special HR skills, like in psychiatrists. So all kinds of experts are available and should be used by the family members. If all these fail, then the parties have no choice.
Dr. Vinod, was that directed at me?
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Okay. In terms of what is a family constitution, it's really a document that just outlines some of the practical rules by which a family will work and support one another. So things like who can own shares, what education is required. It defines some rules and regulations that would otherwise potentially be left out in the open that could lead to conflicts down the line, as we've heard from the other panelists. So all sorts of things can go in there. And there's one very large family firm here in the UK that I know that when they have their board meetings, they will, if they have a question and they don't quite know how to answer it, they'll take the constitution out and look at what the paper says and have a look at how they can interpret what the agreed family approach to that would be. I think the second question you raised was with regards to patriarch to paper. The family constitution is not a legally binding document, so it's a set of rules and frameworks really for the family to come together and work together. So it's something that the patriarch or the matriarch that's running that business would use as a guidance and framework to make decisions, but it's also a commonly appreciated document that the rest of the family will be aware of. So it's just defining some of the rules and regulations, but also it's often used in conjunction with the shareholders agreement, which defines the general purpose of the shareholders in the business. So if someone doesn't want to follow one of the agreed family rules, then there will be a policy within there as to how they could escalate that, how they could seek legal advice, or how they could try and rectify that by mediation. So it's always good to have that sort of clause in it. I think it's also really important to understand that the constitution is not set in stone, and it should be drawn out of a process whereby all the family collectively talk about what they want and what the purpose of the business is. And they devise phrases and frameworks and policies within that document that really meet the needs and the purpose of the family running that business. So it's an agreed document that can evolve over time. So it's not set in stone, it evolves, but it's a set of guidance and frameworks that does help families deal with some of the challenges that we've heard talked about today.
Okay, I got unmuted. Ms. Sonu Baswin, I would like to hear your views. And in the Indian context, have you helped anybody set up a family constitution and your experiences?
Okay, so just to add to what Paul said, you know, most business owners are familiar with memorandum of association and articles of association. I would say that the family constitution is more like an articles of association, which is their internal document about what the family can do, what the various family members can do, should do, when should something happen, when should something not happen, what are they allowed to do, what are they not allowed to do. Now, it is at the end of the day non-binding document, which is not enforceable. But then my view, and I'm talking to a bunch of lawyers here, is that any agreement, any legal agreement at the end of the day is just a piece of paper. Because if the intent to do something, if the intent to follow the agreement is there, you don't really require the agreement. But if the intent is not there, no matter how robust and how strong the agreement, how strong the rules are, they will either find a way out or it will be terminated. So a family constitution is something which is where it is meant to be followed in the spirit rather than by the letter per se. Because the intent is to give, again, a gentle guideline to the family members about, you know, what they should do, what they shouldn't do in the future. And while it is absolutely fantastic if everybody can sit together and come to to a family constitution that has 100% approval of 100% of the people, I think it's a bit of a utopian dream because of the way people are. And I'm not saying that, you know, it's necessarily bad people who disagree. It's also good people who may not agree for a variety of reasons. So at some stage, the patriarch will have to take a call and decide, in his opinion, what should work and what shouldn't work. And of course, it is subject to change through the next generations. So in my experience, what I have done, and something that I'm proud of, is helped a family rework their family constitution to take into account the new reality. And this was written way back, and it was a legal document, but that is a legal document that could be changed. And after council, and you know, that piece of paper, those set of guidelines was causing immense conflict within the family. And having heard the various family members talk about, you know, the reason for conflict, and then going through that piece of guidelines, I realized that if it could be changed, it would give it would solve a lot of problems. And the family did check with their lawyers, and the lawyer said, yes, you know, there is always a case for modifying that document, and the document was modified, and the conflict did end, or minimize, not end, but was minimized by a great extent. So again, it is a direction for the family members to follow. Yeah, so that's my adding 2 bits to what Paul said.
A quick question to Mr. Ajit Chorodia. You are going through this whole process, sir. So what kind of questions, what kind of concerns?
Tomorrow there is no clash when we look at, there are no more leakages which are there. So those are the types of concerns which have been there.
In India, it is a very top-down communication society. So how does it feel when the younger generation speaks to the earlier generation about their share and what they will get? I mean, how does it, I mean, is it an emotional experience? Is it an intense experience? What did you go through?
See, it's not, there is definitely a gap which is there. So our upbringing is such that we would not question anyone who's there elder in the family, more so if the elder is a charismatic person. So people will not come. So that is why the role of the facilitator, the counselor, that comes important. So I can Google and probably take one family constitution and then take it and draft it on my own. It doesn't happen in that particular way. So you definitely need a trained person who's there, who can understand the psychology of the people. There's a one-on-one session which is there. I know you people are doing this particular job, so without that it doesn't happen. So you definitely, if more so in a family where more number of members are there, you will need a professional to help. On your own, whatever you try, it will not be there because there will be suppressed feelings. So first and foremost, in our thing, at least I would say about 15-20 hours which were there. More than that was spent by the facilitator on a one-on-one, trying to elicit what are your problems, what are your feelings, what have been your deprivations, what is your grouse against others. You know, all those questions which are there, they have to be taken out. In spite of doing all this, in my own family which is there, I also know that there are certain family members who are not accepting this. He said, okay, you want to do, you go ahead. We will be part of it. But if you're asking me that emotionally and physically we will accept this particular thing, no. So, but still in the larger interest, if something is going on, they're participating. But heart in heart, have you been able to break whatever feelings have been there or suppressed feelings which have been there? Have they totally come out? No, it is not fully possible. But still, at least we have a framework, a document which is there. We believe we can take. So my words which were there also was very, very clear. It is an attempt being made by me to ensure that the family business perpetuates for some more time.
Vinodji, we have with us here Mr. Anand Singhania, who is the CEO of JK Corporation. And also he is a former Bombay Management Association president and a very active person in the Indian Merchants Chamber, an industrialist of very high standing. Thank you, Anandji, for being part of this session. Anandji has an observation and a question, so I'm handing over to him.
Thank you so much, Professor Mani. First of all, the heartiest congratulations to you for, managing the BMA in such a very effective and digital way to keep us all connected. The new challenges, you've taken it up in such a positive manner. I've really enjoyed this session on family business and succession planning, and I can see a lot of good takeaways. I have a question to the panel. I think even Dr. Vinod has very well moderated this session. The question is, as families grow larger, I mean, I come from a family which is about 135 years in this family business, and every decade or two, you see a few family members leave the larger family tree and they move elsewhere, maybe for whatever reasons, they don't get along, or they have different business ideas, or they are too aspirational, or whatever. The government rightly, I think, has come up with the equal rights to the girl child. So when it is joint property, they have an equal right. So how do families manage equal right for businesses and say for the dwelling house, where you stay? I have a son and a daughter. What would be your advice to be? Thank you.
Wasim, would you like to take a shot at that? Sorry, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, Vinodji. We lost you for a second in between. Could you identify who's going to answer?
Paul, would you like to respond to that?
I can try. I can give you a Western response. I don't fully understand the intricacies of Indian law and the dwelling house perspective, but I do know there's a growing phenomenon around the world, and the Western world in particular, that's allowing more opportunity for women in business and women in roles in family business. And actually the opportunity, I think, is fantastic. And if you take the UK, for example, there are as many female CEOs now in family firms as there are men, and they have fantastic roles. And I think the diversity adds a new nuance to the family business. So it's interesting listening to the Indian perspective, where you talk about the patriarch and the decision of the patriarch, and it's always used as the patriarch. And I think going forward, there will be more opportunity for the matriarch. I think the whole division, especially in the Western world, that parents struggle with is in how they can separate assets between their own children and the next generation in terms of making it fair and equal for all of them, and for those that are in the business and those that aren't. So there's all sorts of analogies in terms of the assets split between those working in the business getting more of the business assets, and maybe some of the personal assets being distributed to the other family members. I think you ask a very interesting question, and I'd probably hand it back to Dr. Vinod in terms of just the Indian perspective and how that plays out and what's changing. But I think we're living in a changing world, and I think there are going to become more and more opportunities for women in family firms across India.
Before I call upon the other panelists, I would like to share that in India, we have equal inheritance for both boys and girls. Many years ago, it was not the case. Having said that, when the founder is handing over to the next generation, we advise our clients that based on the competence of the children and based on the involvement of the children in the business, they give the managing and voting rights accordingly. That is one way it is done. As far as the family home is concerned, it is a very emotional issue. We cannot draw a line between in the middle of the house and say, this is yours and this is mine. And neither, and very often, they are not able to buy 3 separate properties and say, okay, child 1 takes this, child 2 takes this, while the founder keeps this property till the end of their life. So that is an interesting situation. Sanjay or Madam Basin or Vijay Kumarji, would you like to give your insights on how you have handled this? Sanjay, would you like to take a shot?
Yes. So in such kind of cases, first the child is asked the interest in whether they want to run the business or no. Even if it's a girl child and the child is asked, are you interested in getting involved in business? Yes, we have some cultural issues in India where a girl marries, leaves the parents' house and goes to the in-laws. But still, if the girl child is interested in running the business, then yes, provisions are made for it. uh, they are kind of taken care. The rules are laid out, so there is no partition, or there is no bias shown against the child if the child shows that yes, interest in it. There is also the capability to run it. Yes, I may have the interest or an inclination to run it, but I may not be capable. I may not be the right person. So the head of the family needs to decide that yes, if it is possible and if the person has the capabilities and has the interest in doing it, then the patriarch actually supports and encourages, even if it's a girl child, to kind of come and participate in business. Uh, that's what we've seen in most of our clients' cases.
If I can add just another bit to what already has been said. So Anand, I don't know whether your question was specifically around a house or around all assets. If it was only around, sorry. So was your question
It's for generally, I was referring to
generally?
business as well as dwelling house.
Yeah. So, whenever I've been asked for advice, my advice has been to separate the business as an asset from the other assets. Because the way I look at it is that the business, because when I say you, I mean the business owners, because there is, you have a lot of people's livelihood dependent on the employment, you have a greater responsibility towards them. And you should not let your family conflicts be responsible for the loss of somebody else's livelihood. And normally whenever there is a conflict in the family, it does affect the business, and therefore it would be ideal to ring fence the business from conflicts. And I'm sure the lawyers have many ways of doing it. And then look at the other set of assets. And at the end of the day, assets have emotional value and financial value. And it is not always, or you could actually sit down and divide the assets first based on emotional values, and then check out the financial value, and then compensate.
And as rightly said by Paul, it is a process and it is not an event, as told by Ms. Sonu also. So this takes time. So the earlier you start, the better it is.
Sorry, if I can just add to what Sanjay said, that Sanjay, I'd rather just look at it from the inheritor's age point of view rather than from the patriarch's point of view. Right from the childhood, if the child is kind of, the essence infused with the business, and it just helps. So, even talking to the child about the business is planning for succession.
So I think
All good things in, sorry.
Yes, Vinodji, I was about to say all good things have to come to a pause because
Yes,
I believe
good things have to
learning,
come to an end.
no, I would believe that there's so much of a wealth of knowledge that has come out today that everyone who's been present here is going to take back a lot of memories, a lot of questions in the mind, and maybe a lot of action points, however small they could be, to implement back in their own businesses. I want to, at the very outset, compliment each one of the panelists for their very frank sharing of views. The wealth of experience that they have gathered was so visible in the various discussions. I particularly like to mention each one of them: Mrs. Raji Raju, Mrs. Sonu Basin, Paul Andrews, Sanjay Mehta, Vijay Kumar Lodaji, Ajit, and of course, our master who so beautifully crafted this entire discussion. That is none other than Dr. Vinod Surana. Thank you so much for making this such a wonderful learning experience for every one of us. BMA is obliged to Surana and Surana for having partnered with us to lead this wonderful discussion that we had today on family businesses and succession planning. I'd like to request every one of us, if you can put on your videos, let's take a group photograph, though digitally, so that we can preserve this memory of the wonderful learning experience that we had this evening with BMA and Surana. Your feedback and comments are welcome in the chat box. I will, of course, request you once again, please put on your videos so that we can start the process of capturing this moment. I have my colleagues from the BMA Secretariat, whom we aptly call the women power of BMA, since there was so much talk about women and men and succession. Our entire BMA Secretariat is manned by women. And I'm going to request to please do the honors and capture this moment for us. Oindrila, Supriya, please do the honors. And once you complete, let us know. As it happens in digital, we have multiple screens. So please have a little bit of digital patience while we capture this moment across the 3 screens that are present out here this evening.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening and look forward to continued learning on the BMA platform. Visit us on the BMA website to know more about our programs. Every Wednesday and every Friday is when we do our webinars. Thank you very much, everybody. Namaskar.
And thank you, and enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
The friction is created in the family. So there would be a lot of dissatisfaction among the members of the family. So you would be reaching a position where you will never be able to meet the aspirations and I would say the psychological needs of all the family members who are there. So the earlier it is taken, the better it is, because at least you have created a forum. You have a monthly family constitution. I mean, you'll have a family business board meeting every month, probably discussing. It's a very good way of giving a platform for succession. The earlier question of yours, where you asked whether the family business which is there can be given to the particular person, is it dependent on a person? Yes, it is dependent on a.
It's always a byproduct. If the next generation understands that there is value to be built, the money is a byproduct. I think it's important that the next generation is made to understand the nuances of the business, the importance of the value. What are we giving back to the community, to the country? What is the value that we are creating? What did your grandfather build? What was the reason that your grandfather got into this business? Stories. These are important. And it's very important that you find a family member to do that, because no matter what, it is impossible, near to impossible, for somebody from the outside to come in and give you these kinds of stories and nuances that will help keep the family together. So this is my take. If there's anything more I can add, please do ask me.
Any of the other panelists would like to reflect on that? The role of culture.
I think that's fantastic, and I'd completely echo everything that's just been said. I think the stories, one of the things I talk about an awful lot here in the UK is the story and the journey of the family, and actually embracing and encouraging the family to share the story of the great-grandfather. The oldest family business here in the UK is 28 generations old and goes back over 500 years. They're 505 years old this year. And actually, they tell their story and they share their story on social media, but they're capturing nuggets of that story that will be lost for generations if they don't. So I think the story and the emotional aspect, and the lady just spoke, she came to life, and the energy, and it just inspires the next generation, which is fantastic. I think the only other thing I think we should just mention is that as an organisation, Family Business United champions family firms. We celebrate the longevity and their success and provide tools to help them achieve their goals. But for me, it's not about the perpetuation necessarily of the family business. Each family has to decide when is the right time possibly to.
Enough for the professional to succeed. And by the environment, I mean that, you know, in their mind, they have great difficulty in letting go of key decision making. And that is then a problem, because the professional is a professional. I mean, they've been recruited for their talent, not because of their last name. And therefore, and they surely have the best interest of the business at you know, in whatever they do, because they don't want a blot on their CV. I mean, they're being totally selfish about it. They genuinely don't want the business to be run down because it will reflect on their CV. So they will genuinely want to do something which is good for the business. And there, I think it becomes the responsibility of the patriarchs to, again, have that conversation, have that communication open with the CEO, the managing director, whatever designation, and work out a way that the objectives are met. Because if I look at it, the objective of the patriarch and the objective of the CEO is the same, which is to make the business a success. But the way that they go about it may be different. So they need to arrive at some kind of a compromise. I mean, life is full of compromises. They need to work at a compromise where it is something that works for all of them. And just as anecdotal, you know, example. So while we have a Harsh Mariwala who successfully, you know, got in talented professionals to manage his family business so wonderfully. On the other hand, you had Amitabh Bachchan, who got in a very reputed professional in the 90s. And, you know, that professional actually ran his company aground and, you know, made him bankrupt. So you really can't generalize everything.
Okay, my next question. Sorry, go ahead. So you want to say something?
Yeah, one practical advice what we have given to our clients when it comes to this issue is, like, you know, see if there's a cultural fit between your family and the professional who's coming in. So spend some time before you bring the guy in. Let the guy know what he's going to get into. Maybe 3 months or a 6 months courting period, where there's a courtship between the professional and the family to see if this guy will fit in. This is one practical advice we are given to our clients.
Thank you, Sanjay. My next question is to Mrs. Raji Raju. What is the role of women, spirituality, and self-sacrifice in a family business?
Thank you, Vinodji. I'll try to make it relevant to the conversation that is happening. Looks like this is just completely off the tangent kind of a question. So the relevance that I find to this topic is to see from all that I hear, while all the succession planning and the process and procedures and the commercial purposes are all very valid and very important, what if your next gen is not interested in to take up the family business? What if your next gen is not equipped? Not everybody can be an entrepreneur. Even if you have had all kinds of education going abroad, is not equipped to be an entrepreneur. What if there is no buy-in? What if there is fear of, you know, getting into conflicts? There are solutions and there are ways to, you know, reach out and get all the answers. But what do you do to at least to make sure that these kinds of things don't happen and there's a succession that does take place? One of the ways that I looked at it when I did my quote unquote sacrifice, as you call it is, I wanted to not sacrifice, but invest in telling the next gen, my children, the importance of relationships in a family, the importance of collaboration. When I was in the BPO business, it was not rocket science for me and my husband to know that 20 years from now, we used to do syntactical searches where, you know, you can do a syntax and search, but it is going to be contextual. And today you just it's a contextual search. You get a knowledge is in your fingertips. But how do you equip the next generation to understand that it's just not that, it's important to invest in relationship, especially if it's a close-knit family. One of the ways that I felt that these could be, can take place, the connect can happen, is through celebrations. So I used to do a lot of celebrations. Being part of joint families, it was very easy for me to pull everybody together. Sonu talked about how the emotional connect happens when you involve the youngster into coming into business and participating day in and day out, seeing what the patriarch does and, you know, understanding what happens in the business, sharing failure stories, sharing about success stories. It is important to imbibe and spend that time. And is it possible for an entrepreneur to do all of that when he or she is running the business continuously? Run 24/7 is what, especially with my serial entrepreneur, he was setting up businesses every 3 to 4 years. Hence, it was important for me to take this role, to take a step back and give time to see